I'm going to turn it over to Tim Paulson, the president of the San Francisco Labor Council, to say a few words.
The very first email I got yesterday morning was from my sister, Olga Miranda, the president of SEIU Local 87, the janitors union. And Olga said, Tim, we've got to put together a press conference. We've got to absolutely react immediately to this Supreme Court non-ruling. There is so much at stake here by having that 4-4 court and having the 4-4 court leave so many millions of people, especially the parents of American citizens who might not be citizens, that President Obama had wanted to stop from deportation. And that is exactly what the ruling means. There are millions of people throughout the United States right now that are going to continue to be subject to deportation. And what I want to say is that we are going to continue to fight for immigration reform. And the biggest message that we can say right now, and I think I know what's on this yellow sign that's here, and that is at least until November, if not forever, there should be absolutely no deportations whatsoever. And we're asking President Obama and ICE and everybody else, despite what the Supreme Court didn't do, that we will not sit by while people are deported. And that was one of the biggest messages we're going to have today. So I would like to turn it over to the photographer, the Secretary-Treasurer of the Labor Council, Olga Miranda, who will be co-emceeing this event with me. Olga?
You know, yesterday, when we were hearing President Obama give his point of view on immigration, ayer por la mañana que el presidente dio su opinión sobre la decisión que hizo la Corte Suprema over the decision that the Supreme Court made, it was really heart-wrenching that 8 years ago, a senator came to San Francisco to tell us he wanted to run for president. He was running for president and wanted our endorsement and our support. And we believed in him because what he inspired was a movement of hope. And in his presidency, besides any other historically president in the United States, no one has had more deportations than this president. I voted for him. I was inspired and I gave hope, and we believed in the hope. But yesterday, the Supreme Court, the decision that they made was heart-wrenching and heartbreaking. We have a lot of work to do, and I want to be able to reiterate the same message that a lot of pro-immigrant organizations, labor unions, and folks, families, our families that are affected by our families being separated and deported, losing their jobs and everything overnight. It's not fair. We are not defeated. As a community, as a movement, we are not defeated. We will continue to be a voice for working immigrant families. We will continue to contribute. Our dreams are still not shattered because we have hope in our children that we'll be able to continue this movement, and we will be alongside the streets for those children and for our families. But it's horrible how our rights and our jobs have been stripped away. Every day they chip away at our dignity, and every day they push us more into the darkness so that not just our pride, but our families are being every day put on the line. I want to thank every brother and sister that's up here from labor, and I especially want to thank every elected that is here from San Francisco, our Board of Supervisors. Thank you to all of our electeds that are here, simply because usually your schedules inundate you with all of the places you need to be and things you need to say, but this is important. It's an issue that's very close to all of us. And of all the things that we fight in San Francisco, this is one of the issues that we all come together around. We will not be pushed back into the dark. We will continue to fight. We still have a lot of work to do. Tenemos mucho trabajo que hacer. Mucho trabajo. No estamos derrotados. We are not defeated. We will continue to work. Are we defeated? No! We will continue to fight. We are not defeated. This movement will continue. We will make the Republicans accountable who've taken our seat from the Supreme Court. We will make those senators and Congress members that are asking for our endorsements not to take the immigrant community or Latino community for granted. We are immigrants. We contribute to this society. We are not criminals. We contribute to this society, and we are not defeated. We are are still continuing this movement, and we will continue to fight. Thank you.
The people in Congress were sitting in about guns. I think it's beautiful to see that. I was so proud to see that sit-in. But where is the sit-in for the undocumented families that are going to be split apart? Where has been the sit-in? Democratic leadership in the House, in the Senate, for those families. Where has been the leadership when we have a president that, you know, it's nice to go and hear the president talk about how horrible the Supreme Court is and how it's un-American that they're splitting up families. Well, Mr. President, listen to your own words. It's been un-American that you have deported more people than George W. Bush. It's going to take more than just a press conference when you come here and say platitudes and criticize the Republicans. It's easy to criticize Republicans in San Francisco, but how about doing the heavy lifting and actually doing the work when you're in Washington, D.C., when you're in Sacramento, when you're in San Francisco? And here in San Francisco, as much as we talk about Washington, D.C., City Hall has turned its back on the Latino community. You just had a press conference of Latino leaders who felt out of the process when it came to the budget. And we also have a sheriff's department and a police department that it's turning its back on the years of work to protect the rights of immigrants in San Francisco. So let's be honest about that too.
Thank you for your fight, Supervisor Campos. Out in the sunset, we have a supervisor who's, and I want to thank you for coming and attending today. Let's give it up for Supervisor Katie Tang. Thank you for coming. Longshore workers, I see SEIU 10-1, I see SEIU 87, I see we have people from our Immigration Center here, I have UFCW in their colors up here on the stage. Local 21, Bob Muscat from the IFPTE, Local 21, who am I missing? IBW 1245, all this and less. Local 2 is here, sign and display 5, and 261 is here from the laborers. So this is pretty good. I want to thank everybody for coming out. And that being said, I'd like to have the head of our building and construction trades here in San Francisco, my partner Mike Terrio, to say a few words.
Thanks, Tim. It should be no secret to anybody here that a major part of the construction industry in California, and in fact across the country, is an immigrant workforce. And that workforce is both documented and undocumented. And that is as true for union members as for those who are not union members. And I will tell you this from my experience prior to this job as an organizer and a business representative for the Iron Workers Union. A worker who feels free to, a worker who has the feeling that he has full employment rights or she has full employment rights is a worker that is much less afraid to stand up for him or herself. And that will listen to a union, and that will work with a union, and that will fight for better wages. And that is as true for an undocumented worker who is protected by a union as for an undocumented worker. We know who benefits from the current system, and it is not documented workers. They suffer along with the undocumented. Who benefits are the developers who are unscrupulous and the contractors who are unscrupulous. That's who benefits. That's what we need to stop. That's why we need immigration reform. I will say a few more things here. President Obama, end E-Verify. That's right. There is one thing you can do right now that would greatly assist workers in the construction industry and elsewhere, and that is fully within your power. End E-Verify. And I'll ask you a few questions. Is a worker that has full employment rights ever going to undercut the rest of us? No way. Does a worker who has full employment rights feel more able to stand up for him or herself? Yes. Do we want that worker to come out of the darkness and into the sunshine then? Yes. Do we want full employment rights for immigrants? Yes. And that's documented and undocumented. We want full employment for everyone, yes? Yes? Thank you, brothers and sisters.
I want to acknowledge Amy Bacharach from our College Board who joined us at the council. Thank you for coming, sister. And then I'd like to remind everybody Right over at 240 Golden Gate, just a couple blocks from here, we have started our immigration center where we have a full staff that is, well, I shouldn't say a full staff, we're just getting started, but we have great staff that are helping union members and their families through the citizenship process and getting prepared, you know, also for the DACA and DAPA that sounds like we're going to still have to continue to fight on, and all the other fighting ICE raids and stuff like that. And one of the staff people that we have over there is Itzel Calvo. Itzel is a student at City College, and she's working, talking to workers and their families over at our center, and I'd really like her to say a few words to address this issue.
I'm an undocumented immigrant here in the United States, and I'm a student at City College of San Francisco. I work at the Labor Center for Immigrant Justice, and I remember yesterday brought back a lot of memories of when DAPA was first announced in 2014, because when it was announced, it was definitely something that the community had been advocating for, but it was only half of what we really need, right? So when it was announced, a lot of community was celebrating because they were going to be able to have access to work permits and no fear of deportation, while the people that weren't going to qualify it was looking pretty dark for them because they didn't know what was their future going to look like. And my parents, they were not going to benefit from DAPA, but there was a lot of community that was. And when DAPA was announced the first time, something that was left out of the spotlight was the Priorities Enforcement Program. This is a program that further criminalizes undocumented people. Obama sent a strong message that he deports felons and not families, which is counterproductive to our community because we know that felons are also our family. Felons are also part of our community, and we know that being in jail is not the correct way to handle societal issues. They need to rehabilitate and be able to re-enter into society. And so that was something that was very counterproductive to our community. It increased the amount of detention, people in detention, private detention centers that continue to profit off of the backs of immigrants. And so yesterday, when DAPA was blocked again, it was a huge letdown. But of course, the community continues to fight, continues to organize, and we will not stop until every one of us gets opportunity to live with dignity and respect, especially in a city like San Francisco, where it's extremely expensive to live in, and not having a social security number to provide so you can get a job with a living wage. People are being continued to be displaced. Fires in the Mission District that are continuing to displace immigrant families. Those are the things that are directly affecting our communities now. And so we urge President Obama to stop all the deportations and the private all detention centers, and also give temporary protected status to those Central American refugees that are coming into this country looking for sanctuary because of the conditions that have been primarily because of the United States and their intervention in those Latin American countries. So we will not stop here, and we will continue to urge President Obama to stop with the defeatist rhetoric that he's saying that he can no longer do anything. President Obama, yes, you can. You can stop all deportations. You can end all detention now. And you can end the Priorities Enforcement Program that only separates families and continues to criminalize our community. And I just want to thank those of you in labor that are here, showing your solidarity with the immigrant community. And one thing else is that the undocumented community is part of our everyday society. We are here, we are working, we are part of this community, and therefore we appreciate the work that you've been doing, and please continue to move forward in fighting for our rights. We won't stop here, so thank you.
Thank you, Itzel. So we're losing most of our cameras right now, but I want to, right across from 240 Golden Gate is another set of buildings where we have our brothers and sisters from Local 2. And so on our ending words, I would like to bring up one of the brothers.
Hi, everybody. It's an honor to me to be here with you, but let me tell you, my heart is broken when I saw yesterday the news that 4-4, the Supreme Court didn't take the step ahead that we need to cover all this community, those parents of all those citizens that want here. The Supreme Court is denying them the right to stay here legally. That's broke my heart. Let me tell you, I originally from El Salvador. I come in the middle of the night. I'm thankful with this country that opened and embraced me, opened their hands for me and embraced me when I come here. And I believe like all those immigrants that don't have a documents here, they should have it. Those are good people, those are our neighbors, those are our brothers or sisters or grandparents and so on. This is very important we keep fighting for, day in, day out. I'm an organizer with local too, and you know, this struggle is not end. The outcome 4-4 yesterday from the Supreme Court is not the end. That's the beginning. We need to make sure this come November and the years to come in this come election, we are not going to stop. We need to make sure we turn out to vote. Make sure you come out and vote for those leaders who are going to represent you. It doesn't matter if they are Republicans or Democrats. They need to be accountable. They need to be accountable. They need to do the right thing. Okay? Thank you.
My name is Itzel Calvo.
And we spoke here about the continuing attack on immigrant workers. What's going on in San Francisco as far as the conditions of immigrant undocumented workers?
So for many years, people that don't have status need a social security number to be able to work because of the program E-Verify. And so there is a lot of fear when it comes to raising concerns about the working conditions because people that are aware of folks' status, they're afraid of repercussions, of retaliation against the workers. I work at a labor center for immigrant justice, and time and time again, we continue to see cases where immigrant workers come to us with work-related issues where they need legal consultations, and so it's been really difficult knowing that DAPA didn't go through because that would have helped 5 million immigrants be able to have some sort of status. A lot of those folks that would really need that status. Unique to San Francisco, it's across the country, just labor conditions, exploitation, sexual harassment, all of these issues that if you had status, if you had citizenship, you would not be afraid to speak up against your employer, but because people are afraid that they would get deported or get fired, they're afraid to lose their jobs, and so that deters them from speaking out against their employer.
And do you think the employers and bosses take advantage of that?
Of course, they do. They do. We've heard stories of many migrant women and even men who have been sexually assaulted and don't see a way to speak out because of their status. They're afraid to come out. And so we're working against that narrative too, that trying to bring them all of the labor rights that they need, because immigrants do have rights. Regardless of citizenship, they do have rights, and that's something that we're continuing to address in the community, is that they do have rights as workers and as immigrants.
And you say that President Obama could actually stop a lot of these deportations. Why don't you talk about what President Obama has done, why so many people have been deported, what that's meant to the community, and what he could do if he wanted to.
So President Obama first came out with his DACA program that helped young undocumented youth be able to access a social security number and not be afraid of being deported. But all of that was because of undocumented immigrant youth occupying his campaign offices when he was running for re-election. And so he's made a lot of promises, but unlike any other president in the United States, he's deported almost 3 million people. And all of this is because of the different enforcement programs that have been passed that further criminalize immigrants, that double punishment. People with DUIs, simple DUIs, are now a priority to be deported. When it's also known that citizens with DUIs, they get the opportunity to rehabilitate and be able to continue their lives here, regardless of what has happened. And now, while we're not condoning drinking and driving, we also know that immigrants are doubly punished for that and even deported and separated from their families. The undocumented immigrant community faces a lot of hardships, and so any refuge, that they can take, they'll get, because they're worried about their kids going to school, they're worried about not getting fired, they're worried about not getting deported. So there's a lot of barriers that we face, but it's definitely something that we've been working on in our own community, is to not build this good immigrant versus bad immigrant narrative, because we all deserve to live a good life and pursuit of dignity and peace. And so Obama has the authority to stop deportations. One of the biggest industries of profit is detention. So people, there's a 3,400,000 bed quota that needs to be met. And so people are profiting off of detaining people that could have relief, but because of the profit that the private detentions are making, they're just stuck there. People have been there for 3 years, 4 years. I've worked with families that have been in detention, and they have definitely. One of the family members was in a detention for 6 months. Those are 6 months that he lost from seeing his children grow. Those are 6 months where his children, it was their birthdays. Family members passed away that he wasn't able to attend. So it does more than separate, families, but it does something to your mental health as well. Just being locked in there simply because you're undocumented. It's really heartbreaking, but that's why we continue to fight and stop the deportations.
And your center,
Nosotros estamos localizados en el 240 Golden Gate Avenue y proveemos a las familias que trabajan o viven en San Francisco asesorías legales. So, si tienen alguna cuestión de inmigración, puede venir a nuestras oficinas y hacer una appointment con nosotros, una cita, y nosotros le ayudaremos con lo que ocupe, si es ciudadanía o si es renovar su permiso de trabajo o si es solamente si ha sido víctima de un crimen y necesita ayuda legal. Nosotros le podemos ayudar con eso y es completamente gratis para las personas que viven y trabajan en San Francisco.
you have a card?